Hi and a very good day to my lecturer, Miss Nabila. Today we are going to present about our project Appreciation and Culture. My name is Nurul Bashira Samihah binti Azarai, and today I will present about the background of the era and the overview of the era. The history of literature is the historical development of writing in prose or poetry that attempt to entertain, enlighten, or instruct the reader, or listener, or observer, as well as the development of the literary technique used in communicating these pieces. For this project, we choose Romanticism era. Background of the era. Romanticism is a 19th century European movement that arose in response to the Industrial Revolution and the disillusionment with Enlightenment value of reason. After 1789, the year of the French Revolution, which caused significant social change in Europe, Romanticism emerged. Based on the same ideal of liberty, fraternity, and legality, a new movement was born, aiming to highlight the artist and nature emotion and irrational world as opposed to the predominance of reason and rationality during neoclassicism. For the overall of the era, Romanticism can be characterized by the 5 I, which is firstly imagination, secondly intuition, thirdly idealism, fourthly inspiration, and lastly individuality. Firstly, imagination. Imagination is emphasized over reason. This was a backlash against the rationalism characterized by the neoclassical period or age of reason. Imagination is considered necessary for creating all art. British writer Samuel Taylor Coleridge called it intellectual institution. Secondly, institution. Romantic place value on institution or feeling and instinct over reason. Emotion is important in romantic art. British romantic William Wordsworth described poetry as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling. Thirdly, idealism. Idealism is the concept that we can make the world a better place. Idealism refers to any theory that emphasizes the spirit, the mind, or language over matter thought has a crucial role in making the world the way it is. Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher, held that the mind forces the world we perceive to take the shape of space and time. Fourthly, inspiration. The romantic artist, musician, or writer is an inspired creator rather than technical master. What this means is going with the moment or being spontaneous rather than getting it precise. Lastly, individuality. Romantics celebrate the individual. During this time period, women rights and abolitionism were taking root as major movement. Walt Whitman, a later romantic writer, would write a poem entitled Song of Myself. It begins, I celebrate myself. The art. Romanticism was a movement across all the art, which is visual art, music, and literature. All of the art embraced themes prevalent in the Middle Age, which is chivalry, courtly love, and the literature and art from this time depicted these themes. Visual art. Neoclassical art was a rigid, severe, and unemotional. It harkened back to ancient Greece and Rome. Romantic art was emotional, deeply felt, individualistic, and exotic. It has been described as a reaction to neoclassicism or anti-classicism. Lastly, music and component. Classical musicians included composers like Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and Franz Joseph Haydn. Romantic musicians included composers like Frédéric Chopin and Franz Liszt. 1730 until 1820, classical music emphasized internal order and balance, while in 1800 to 1910, romantic music emphasized of feelings.
A very good morning to Miss Nabila. My name is Rafini Borsangan Anak Baxter Bruce, and I would like to explain about the topic of assignment, appreciation, and culture. So my part is about importance author and works. So, there are many important authors and works in Romanticism due to the love of nature, expression of emotion, focus on self, focus on history, the emphasis on aesthetic beauty and creative and imaginative. Okay, let's see for the first one is the love of nature. The glorified of nature is of the foremost important in Romanticism development. Romanticism did not just celebrate sunny days and beautiful views. They're also glorified within the wild, untamed perspective on nature, from the breathtaking spectacle of thunderstorm to the sobering severity of rocky crags. So, the second one is expression of emotion, which are focusing on emotion is an essential feature of almost all romantic writing. So you can see that when you read the work of this period, you can feel all form of emotions such as love, feel of pity, fear, sadness, and loneliness. This focus on emotion provide a counterpoint to the national and made Romanticism poetry and prose very readable and relevant. Yes. And the third one is focus on self. Let's see. Many works of romantic literature are very personal and often explore the poet's self. Autobiographical influence can be seen in poetry and prose during this period. The importance of emotion and creativity work was the poet background and the real world environment. So this is like they explain, they're talking about their background by writing a poem in Romanticism. And other than that, focus on history. Romantic literature often has a clear focus on exotic places, events, and historical objects. Poetry and prose touch on antique and gift of ancient culture from around the world, and remote locations are the setting for some of the literary work of the time. This is like their add in a bit of history, and so that it makes it more interesting in the poet. Okay, and other than that, the importance of the author and work in the emphasis on aesthetic beauty. Let's see. Romantic literature also deals with the subject of human aesthetic as well as nature. This was especially true for the depiction of female beauty. The writer praised romantic women for their natural beauty, not artificial or limited. A classic example of this quality is the poem, such as The Walk Beauty by Lord Byron, or you can call Sir Byron. Yes. And lastly is about creativity and imagination. In contrast to previous generation of reasoning, romantic written explore the importance of imagination and creative impulse. Romantic poets celebrate imagination, creative progress, and artistic perspective. You can see like they celebrate that vision in their work, believing that artists and writers see the world differently. You can see this like they imagine how glorified their works in the poet, their era in how they're going to be successful one day. That's how they express their feeling by imaging. So, in conclusion, Romanticism changed the concept of literature. It was limited to the study of classical music and lacked imagination, but it was very limited and dominated by rationality. That's for me. Thank you.
Um, Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Zarindura, and then I would like to present about personal view on different era of literature. So these are the era that I've chose, which is the Elizabethan period, the Victorian period, and the modern period and Romantic period. Okay, the Elizabethan period, the body works written during the reign of Elizabeth I of England, probably the most splendid age in the history of English literature, during which writers as Sir Philip Sidney, Edmund Spenser, Roger Ascham, Richard Hooker, Christopher Marlowe, and William Shakespeare flourished. The Elizabeth age saw the flowering of poetry, the sonnet, the Spenserian stanza, dramatic blank verse, was a golden age of drama, especially for the plays of Shakespeare, and inspired a wide variety of splendid prose, from the historical chronicle version of Holy Scripture, papers, and literary criticism to the first English novel. For the Victorian period, in the year of 1832 until 1901, chronically, the Victorian period roughly coincide with the reign of Queen Victoria over England from 1832 until 1901. In literature, the early Victorian age can be said to be the age of critical realism. The critical realism of the 19th century flourished in the 40s and the early 50s. Puritan morality of the early and mid-Victorian period was reflected in the novels. In Victorian novel, the society effects on the individual are analyzed. The modern period, which is from the year 1914 until 1945, the modernist impulse is fueled in various literatures by industrialization and urbanization, and by this search for an authentic response to a much changed world. Although pre-war works by Henry James, Joseph Conrad, and other writers are considered modernism as literary movement is typical associated with the period after World War One. The enormity of the war had undermined humankind's faith in the foundation of Western society and culture, and post-war modernist literature reflected as a sense of disillusion, disillusionment and fragmentation. A primary theme of the S. Eliot Long poem The Wasteland, 1922, a seminal modernist work, is the search for redemption and renewal in a sterile and spiritually empty landscape, with with its frag- with its fragmentary images and obscure allusion. The poem is typical of modernism, requiring the reader to make an active role in interpreting the text. For romantic period, romantic poet wrote about nature, imagination, and individuality in England. Some romantic include Coleridge, Blackheath, and Shelley in Britain, and and Johannes von Goethe in Germany. Jane Austen also wrote at the same time, though she is typically not categorized with the male romantic poets in America. This period is mirrored in the transcendental period from about 1830 until 1850. Transcendentalists include Emerson and Thoreau. The most notable feature of the poetry of this time is the new role of individual thought and personal feeling, where the main trend in 18th century poetic had been to praise and general to see the poet as a spokesman of the society addressing a cultivated and homogeneous audience and having his and the conveyance of truth. The romantics found in source of poetry in the particular unique experience. Right.
Hi, madam. Here I would like to present for my part, which is the conclusion. Okay, for the conclusion, I just give a simple review. To summarize, Romanticism is a group of writers that highlighted the importance of nature in our lives, as well as the state of solitude when studying nature and worshipping God. In their poems, they also tended to express the feelings and emotions. Furthermore, Romantics preferred to retreat to the imagination in which they could achieve whatever they desired. Despite the fact that this was difficult to attain in reality, overall, no one can deny the contributions of Romantic poets to social sciences, particularly literature and poetry. Instead of specific gender and political orientation distinctions, which have historically served as Romanticism's defining categories, this conclusion recommends interpreting Romanticism through a model of internal conflict. Modern culture shifts to a socially contingent conception of government in which a newly minted individualism battles with its inherent contingent social basis by replacing Aristotle with Rousseau. Thomas Carlyle suggests in Sartor Resartus that the Romantic age has come to an end. Sartor Resartus used Frankenstein imaginary, linking horror to empirism and condemning the Scottish Enlightenment of being overly materialistic. Rousseau is resurrected by Carlyle as an anti-empiricism. So for the reference, I just attached the link in the reports. I think that's all from my part, and thank you, madam.